My name is Apollo Gonzalez and I work for Catapult Systems. Today we're going to be talking about cloud computing, and the name of the presentation is Are We All In? We're going to be looking today at understanding and defining what the cloud is. We're going to be identifying Microsoft's cloud strategy, and we're going to learn a little bit about the Windows Azure Platform. So our objectives today are to identify and really define what the cloud means. We're going to look at Microsoft's overall cloud strategy. We're going to talk a little bit about the Solution Accelerator program that Catapult has created to help fast track some of the different cloud computing offerings that exist on the market, especially as it relates to Microsoft's cloud offerings. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to work on the definition of what cloud computing is. But before we can really understand the cloud and what that means, we have to look at the component pieces, and we have to start looking at the paradigms and the paradigm shifts that have happened in technology and in other industries to get a better idea and a better feel for what the cloud really means. What did you see through that sequence of slides? What we saw was the very first shoe, and then we saw really an evolution from the first shoe all the way to the shoes that we have today. And in producing the very last shoe that you saw, there's an enormous amount of technology that's involved in producing that shoe. So let's look at the next sequence of slides so that we can look at the next evolution or paradigm shift. What did you see in those sets of slides? Well, we saw really the very first mobile phone. And you saw the progression from the very first mobile phone, which is really just to make phone calls, all the way to our modern phones, which are really more than just something to make a phone call with. They're really a platform. People manage their lives with their cell phones. And so today, with mobile phones and mobile technology, you really have a whole new world and a whole new ecosystem of capabilities available to you. So now let's look at the last sequence of slides and really start honing in on the paradigm shift that gets us to the cloud computing definition. What did we see through that sequence of slides? Well, what you saw was really a huge paradigm shift in operating system platforms. We went from the MS-DOS platform, which is really just a black screen that had certain functionality that allowed you to do certain things like use a calculator or use a paint program, all the way to Windows 7, which is now a very multi-network, multi-functional operating system platform that is allowing companies to do things that they've never been able to do before. The very last slide in that sequence was the Windows Azure Platform slide, which really is the next step in the evolution of cloud operating system platforms. And the Windows Azure Platform is Microsoft's entry into this arena and into this area. So with the Windows Azure Platform, you have now a whole new ecosystem of computing power that you've never had before. And so the way that I like to think about it is in your traditional operating system paradigm, you have different operating systems. So for example, you have a Windows operating system, you have a Mac operating system, and you have, let's say, a Linux operating system. Those three systems really don't communicate with each other. Wouldn't it be nice if you were on your Windows operating system and you can leverage and use a program that was sitting on a Mac operating system? Well, obviously today that's impossible. But with the cloud, I could build different applications and different systems to interact, and I can consume those applications in one user interface. This is something that has never been possible before without the cloud. So we've looked at all of these different paradigm shifts, all the way from shoes to operating systems. And really the point is that we want to get to the definition of what cloud computing really is. And so when you look at what we've talked about thus far, we really are now in the cloud, and we've got these cloud operating systems or cloud platform services that offer all of this great functionality, again, that you would never be able to have before in a closed system. And so when you look at the cloud and you look at the different platforms that are available, you have several different types of companies now that are part of this cloud ecosystem. You've got Microsoft, you've got Oracle, you have Salesforce, IBM, Amazon, Google, the list goes on and on and on and on. And in the next couple of months, there'll be even more players out in the cloud. And so the question of the cloud and the question of are we all in, the answer is yes, because if you're not all in the cloud, then you're losing out on an enormous opportunity to benefit from all of the resources that these companies are making available. So now that we have this cloud ecosystem of different platforms, there are different types of services that are offered in the cloud. Again, in order to have a cloud platform, we have to have the different as-a-service offerings that make it possible to do a lot of the things that companies need to do in today's day and age. And so one of the first as-a-service offerings that you see is a software as a service. Some examples of a software as a service would be Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Twilio's VoIP service, and some of the different offerings from Oracle and IBM. With software as a service, the key point and the key factor there is that the company has produced a particular software product and you just consume it. With the platform as a service offerings, what you basically have is an operating system that's in the cloud. Microsoft has the Windows Azure Platform service that allows you to build applications, and they provide the services that allow your application to do the things that your application needs to do. For example, if you were to create a web application or an e-commerce site, you can build the e-commerce site and deploy it to the Windows Azure Platform operating system, and Microsoft would be responsible for managing the services that allow that application to run, and they offer the scalability and reliability without you having to incur the cost of your own on-premise data warehouse or servers. With infrastructure as a service, you have an opportunity to take your operating systems and your virtual environments that you host in your data centers and now move them over to a different provider. For example, you can take your Windows Server operating system that you currently are hosting in a virtual environment on your servers on premise and move those onto the Windows Azure platform. When you do that, you allow Microsoft to incur the cost and to be responsible for the load, the scalability, and the reliability of that virtual environment. So a common question that comes up is, what's the difference between infrastructure as a service, and in some cases just cloud computing, and hosting? And really the difference is in the services that are made available to you in a cloud environment. So just like an operating system provides drivers and services that allows your application to run, the cloud and the different cloud offerings, they provide services that allows your application to do different things. In a traditional hosting model, what you have is an operating system that's still hosted by somebody, but you're responsible for building the services, building the application, and being responsible for all the reliability and costs that are associated with being in a hosted environment. So we saw the different as-a-service offerings. And so the benefits to looking at the different as-a-service offerings is that when you look at your on-premise solutions and you look at your applications and your servers that you have today, you're responsible for managing all of the functionality, all of the servers, and all of the applications. But when you're in the cloud and you have all of these different as-a-service offerings available to you, you can start to reduce your dependency on your on-premise environments. And so with software as a service, for example, all you're really concerned with is configuring your applications that exist in the cloud, because a company like Microsoft is going to be responsible for the reliability, the scalability, the hardware, and the infrastructure, so that your main concern is really your business. When you look at platform as a service, Microsoft with their Windows Azure platform allows you to put your applications in the cloud and allows you to manage your applications and configure your applications, but at the same time, they take care of all the reliability and the scalability that you get with your software as a service offering. And then with the infrastructure as a service, Microsoft is allowing you to put your resources, your virtual environments on their hardware, and then they manage those resources for you. So now that we've looked at the different as-a-service offerings and we've added some definition to what each of those things mean, now we can get a better picture of what the cloud really is in an attempt to solidify our definition of the cloud. And so now that we've seen all the as-a-service offerings, you can see in the cloud things like SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, Salesforce, and several other either software as a service offerings, infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service offerings, all communicating together to build new systems that have never been realized before. In the past, a lot of the functionality that is built between company A and company B is very point-to-point centric. But with the cloud, now I have an ecosystem where I can have a central repository in the cloud where I can have different applications and different company systems communicating together in a different or in a remote environment that they don't have to manage and that is scalable to their needs and for their purposes. Now that we've seen what cloud computing is and what it has to offer, let's define the cloud. And I came up with an acronym to help me to remember what the cloud is and to help define what the cloud is. The acronym I came up with was HIPPOs, because the cloud is so big, I figured I needed an acronym that matched the bigness of the concept. And so the cloud is really all about a hosted environment with internet connected systems and devices. It's a platform, it's on demand, and it's scalable and reliable. So now that we've looked at the cloud and put a definition around what the cloud is, let's look a little more specifically at what Microsoft has to offer and what Microsoft's cloud strategy is. With Microsoft, they have spent an enormous amount of time and money building all of their as-a-service offerings so that companies can benefit from them. Microsoft has both an online or a cloud representation of their service and an on-premise version. For example, you can buy SharePoint Online for a certain amount per month, or you can install SharePoint on your own servers on-premise. You can also leverage the Windows Azure Platform operating system in the cloud and pay for it on a consumption basis, or you can install Microsoft's SQL Server or Windows Server 2008 on-premise on your own hardware in your own virtual environment. So what we want to do now is we want to look at the Windows Azure Platform, which is Microsoft's platform as a service, and really understand the different components that make this platform as a service something that can be used and consumed by businesses. So with the Windows Azure Platform, you have several different services that comprise that platform. Just like in your operating system, you have different platform functionality that allows your applications to do different things. The Windows Azure Platform also has services and functionality that will allow your application to do several different things in a more scalable and reliable way. The first one is Windows Azure Compute and Storage. With this service, you can create and develop web applications, whether that's a Silverlight application or a traditional web application, and you could deploy it to the Windows Azure service. If you need data storage, then you can leverage SQL Azure. SQL Azure is also part of the Windows Azure platform. And so the applications that you build, if they need data storage, you can put all of your data into the SQL Azure data store. If you need security and you need to build hybrid-based applications, so those are applications that you need to put some of the application in the cloud, and then maybe your data needs to reside on premise, you can leverage the Windows Azure App Fabric service that Microsoft provides. All three of these services are part of the Windows Azure Platform service and gives you the scalability and the reliability to build compelling and new applications in the cloud. So in the beginning of the presentation, we looked at the different paradigm shifts that exist. We looked at technology both in the past and in the present. And so we looked at those different things to build a bridge to come up with the definition for cloud computing. And so I want to provide one more example. Today, many people have cell phones and they have their own phone systems at home, but there aren't a lot of people with answering machines. And that's because voicemail is now managed by somebody else. And so if you have a mobile phone, for example, that's managed by the mobile phone company. If you have a phone service at home, that's managed by your home phone service. And so with the cloud, you have that same capability and you have that same functionality where I can put my data in the cloud and I could put my applications in the cloud and I could benefit from that scale and reliability, and I don't have to worry about those particular items. I can let another company be responsible for ensuring that my application is secure and is scalable and reliable. I want to thank you today for watching the presentation on cloud computing. And in the beginning, we said, are we all in? And from this presentation, hopefully you can see that we are all in. The cloud is a game changer, and we are here to help take you to the next level.